Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to our generous patrons who've kept us going for over 400 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Jasiri L. I hope I'm saying your name right, but
Thank you either way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And of course, we have a sponsor to thank. And it's kind of a cool moment because they have launched a new product. Rather, the Ultra version. You've heard us talk about the Lawnmower 4.0, but now they have sort of upgraded it to the 5.0 Ultra. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, how did they upgrade it? One, you can switch heads. It's pretty easy. You just pop it off. You can pop on the other one. And the other head is basically the exact same type of head. It's more powerful as the 4.0. But this head is actually the same tech that they use in their face shaver, the Handyman.
The Handyman.
So you can get completely smooth balls. There's other advancements. You know, it's still waterproof. You can still use it in the shower. And it's actually better if you're going to use the shaver head. It's actually better to do it wet. It's got a way brighter light. It's got a more powerful motor. It's got a separate travel lock.
And I believe you said it has different lights too, or different lighting?
You can change the color tone of the light to match the lighting that you're working under so that it doesn't fuck with your eyes as much. It also comes in just like a slick travel pouch. It's like they heard me say I like travel products, and we're just like, I guess we're just going to build them for this guy exclusively. It's been like a long time since I've shaved my balls.
For shame, Andrew.
I've used trimmers and stuff like that, but like I go down there with a fucking, I don't know. I haven't done that. I feel like everybody does it.
As a married man, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I take care of myself. I just don't, I don't go to the root. So I'll be honest, I was a little bit hesitant, but I decided that I couldn't talk about the thing if I wasn't willing to use it. And so I did it. So anybody who's ever been like, oh, I wonder what Andrew's balls are like. Well, now you know they are baby smooth right now.
Smooth enough you could get a job somewhere with it.
Indeed. I was scared of this thing for no reason. One, I think as long as you take it slow and you make sure you're not like just jamming it into any loose skin or anything like that. I had no problems. Again, I did it in the shower, wet, and it worked great. That's with their recommendations. They give you like a booklet with all their recommendations in their slick packaging. That's another thing we should talk about. They've really upgraded their packaging pretty crazily. But there's it's all the same things you loved about Manscaped, but they've now like beefed it up. It is literally the ultra lawnmower.
Yeah, and you were saying that it's got a bit of the Handyman style roller head now on the 5.0, which is good because it's your balls are your balls, and your sack. So like it's gonna roll along. It's gonna roll around a bit of a spherical or cylindrical
a lot of corners, a lot of edges. One thing that I will point out about the Handyman is great because they're like you can sort of you shouldn't press hard, but like it adjusts to the contours. Right,
got a little bit of a shock absorber in there.
Right. This thing is the same, except it does it in multiple directions. So it's got like that contouring. So if you did press down, you don't have to worry about like nicking yourself. It's still the skin safe technology. It's literally like the cutting edge of cutting your ball hair, which I think is one of their brand things. That's one of the things that they talk about. And it just sort of goes with the rest of the quality stuff that we like from them. The Beard Hedger Pro is still my absolute favorite thing. Look at this hefty boy. They're also calling it like a body hair trimmer too. So it seems like you could, if you were using on like chest hair, other areas of your body. Yeah. you could easily use it. And if it's strong enough to cut through pubic hair, it's definitely strong enough to cut through like armpits or whatever. So for anybody who likes to
Especially mine, tough grown weeds.
Yeah.
All kinds of Viking DNA in there somewhere.
There's other things that I'm leaving out. Like it has adjustable combs now for the other head for trimming. The
other
older
head for your head.
Yeah.
For your other head.
The older one was like a plastic
so you can get
head.
ahead in life. Get a little bit ahead, maybe.
And the newer one is metal. I'm ignoring it because I'm a professional. I'm not gonna make these sexual jokes about my balls.
Well, I mean, hey, man,
it is why you're doing it.
You're not doing it to just hide it away forever. It's like
this is the Silence of the Lambs. You're not.
If you have a really if things go really well for you and your significant other, you want to be presentable upstairs and downstairs,
which is all Manscaped wants for you. They want someone to touch your genitals. They're just helping you with that. But if you're interested in checking out any of these products, but especially the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, please head over to manscaped.com. Use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping. That's code YoVG, all caps, at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. Your balls will thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, sad news. Sad news has inspired this episode a little bit.
It would be remiss of us to not mention it, I guess.
I don't really like. There's no lead into this. Flo died, and anybody who has been a part of the FGC or has been friends like me with people that are in the FGC and have been since the days of it only existing in the arcade, probably knows who that is. I met him for a brief second at 2017 Evo. I think
it was kind of crazy because I remember a really famous clip. It was a pre-Evo stream where he was playing "I Want to Be the Guy," the game, and someone in that, which is a sort of Kaizo Mario style platformer game, and at one point in the game, he's trying to traverse a bottomless pit segment, and a big old giant sprite of Dr. Doom jumps up and just screams "the finger lasers," and he just kills him. And it was like this priceless reaction of just dumbfounded, like.
Isn't that what inspired the way you screamed it in Assist Me?
No, it was my voice clip.
Oh, it was your voice clip.
It was my voice clip.
That's cool. That is, I don't know. That's really cool. But very sad that he passed away, and there are other people who were closer to him that can give more info on that. Like Justin Wong on Twitter.
It was kind of. If anything, I know other people have kind of said this, but it was like, to sort of memorialize, it was really cool because he really started to, getting in early on the ground. Like streaming was a thing, but he was there pretty early on, and he was also showing the fun side of the FGC that wasn't just, here, look at this cool, TAC, or look at this cool, touch of death combo. But like, hey, let me try some other, let me like try other genres, and there's been obviously plenty of other fighting game streamers have followed suit with like trying out other genres and like kind of just showing that like, look, they're not all just, strong, silent types who play, their one game and just grind on it forever. They have fun doing all kinds of things, so kind of like showing the sort of fun, and he was a great, I guess you could say, great ambassador for showing the sort of fun side of the FGC, showing the
he wasn't just like super intense all the time and made you feel bad about every match you lost.
Exactly, like showing the fun side, showing hey, what do we, when the non-fighting game fighting, because I have fun of the fighting games, fun of the non-fighting games. So
one of my favorite comments that Max has ever gotten on a YouTube, and this sounds like it also applies to Flo, is someone early on in the days of Assist Me, when really I didn't really even know how big the FGC was, because again, it was just the arcade crew. But someone just being like, "Oh, I thought everyone in the FGC were dicks, but Max is really nice." It's like, It's like, yeah, there's a few really loud dickheads, but
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
internet being what it is, but
yeah,
yeah. So,
internet culture really boosted that to 11.
mhm.
It's sort of like COD players. Um, a whole lot of the louder ones are homophobic douches, but not all of
Yeah.
them.
No, well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's just it sucks that it sucks that it had obviously gone way too early.
Yeah, I don't even know how old he was.
Too early.
Like
That's
he was in his
the
30s or something
like
like that.
way
Wow,
too
yeah,
early.
yeah.
Either way. And you know, just kind of generally kind of just kind of sucks. That like this is like nobody ever wants to like wake up and read this news. It's been so. But we want to acknowledge it too, though, because it's definitely something worth someone worth remembering. Something to be talked about.
And again, literally talking about that news did inspire what we're now making the podcast topic. What we were talking about was inspired by talking about
Hmm.
flow. And I mean, I'm sure he would not give a shit about, we're not dedicating the episode to him, but he was, that news was inspiring. And basically what we were talking about is like, it seems really hard for any fighting game now to become iconic. It's like
Yeah,
look at Street Fighter 6. MK1 is basically the 12th or the 13th MK game. It's like we haven't really had, outside of anime fighters, we haven't really had any like new attempts at a franchise.
yeah, a
Um,
new IP fighting game. Like Capcom gave up on that long time ago. Like,
right. And what would that take? Why are the classics so iconic? Why do they have the staying power that they do? But
yeah,
then
and
why
I
can't you
I, I think a
do
lot of this
something new?
kind of really flows into um like
Son of
it really whatever. I think it like kind of like generally goes with the attachment, like the attraction, and I don't mean like necessarily physical attraction, although that is definitely a part of it, but like
Chun-Li.
it's kind of like seeing the characters and like liking the characters right away, like first impressions,
Yeah.
right? Like because and Guilty Gear fans are gonna hate me for saying this, because I'm not. But here's the thing, I'm with Guilty Gear fans where like when I first saw Guilty Gear, I'm like, wow, this looks cool. But there's gonna be a lot of people who kind of look at Guilty Gear initially and go like, these are some fucking weird designs. This is
Right.
wild. And Strive, I think that's part of the reason Strive kind of really toned back, like the crazy coats, buckles, zippers, accoutrements, accessories all over the character, right? So characters have a much simpler wardrobe and say Guilty Gear Strive now. A lot of them do. Milia does, Bridget does, Kai, Saul, especially Kai. Good lord, they're just like Leo. They're all like much simpler. I'm wearing a jacket and pants, kind of thing. I'm
Right.
wearing a sweater, kind of. So like they really tried to like simplify it. And hey, it is the best selling Guilty Gear by a country mile now. It's hard to say if that's necessarily from it. I think a lot of it also is timing because again, I've said over and over, best time to release a fighting game is as close to the launch of a new system as possible because people are looking for, you know, something like they're looking for a
Right.
graphical show because fighting games haven't really been for a while, but that used to be a thing. The other thing was that like when you get a new system, usually there's a lot of casual players who are like, oh, I want to get a fighting game. They want a fighting game for their library, and they pick
Right.
one. So being the first is always good there because it's like you could end up being that one fighting game for
Well, it's
people's
sort of
library.
funny, like how fighting games can sometimes be like the technical show off game for graphics and stuff like that. Because
Mhm.
fighting games aren't necessarily intense to run on a system, but often like they are very pretty.
Yeah,
And so like they can be that show off piece for a
yeah.
new system.
Eh,
See, the thing I think why there's like way staying power with Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and uh you know I think it's because they were born in the days of arcade when those didn't get updated very
mhm.
soon. And when they did get updated, there was like huge leaps. but also you literally physically waited in line to play these games at arcades. You were like, because you were paying a quarter per game, unless you were lucky enough to have like one of those free play days, like it added like a sense of scarcity to it. So you
Yeah.
sort of sucked up everything about it
Mm,
when you could get
that's
it.
a good point. Yeah.
And then as it went on, like we're only on Street Fighter 6, granted there's a bunch of
Yeah, I mean, there's
yeah,
the Alpha series and stuff like
there's a bunch
that.
of side stuff, but like I think that's why it has that cultural staying power on top of the other normal things, right? They're
Yeah.
cool looking characters, iconic moves,
Yeah, the sort of
music,
mysterious allure of a new arcade game is something you just can't get anymore,
right?
just because of the way the nature of the industry is now. But like, yeah, when you think about Street Fighter, even to this day with Street Fighter 6, it's like, okay, what is Street Fighter? There's a karate man, guy in a
Mhm.
gi. There's like there's the kung fu lady. There's a sumo wrestler. There's the weird mystic guy who can like stretch his arms really long. There's the big green monster guy. There's the guy with a claw and a mask. There's a boxer. You
Everybody
know,
has a shtick, a
yeah.
very clearly defined
Here's the
shtick,
big giant muscular wrestler dude. Like it's so simple to get across. It's so like obvious what the
right?
game is, right? So and I think I honestly think that kind of even goes into tech. I don't. And here's the thing, like strike, whatever, don't care. I know Harada doesn't listen. I don't like the character designs in Tekken. I don't know. Tekken characters have never seemed. I don't know. I just never got into them. They're either wild. They're either like wildly weird, like Lars and not Lily, but whatever the robot girl is with all the blades coming out of her arms and,
Oh,
and elbows.
yeah, yeah.
You've either got that or you've got just like a million variations of karate kung fu guy, with all the different mishimas and stuff, and
Yeah,
just
I
sort
mean,
of
a
like,
couple of them
here's
are
Brian,
definitely
here's this guy,
yeah.
here's Steve Fox. It's like they're mostly defined by their fighting style, not as much as say their. I mean, but the thing is, you still got here's a guy who's karate man. Here's old karate man. Here's a guy who's military guy. Here's another military guy with a coat.
He's
Here's
a
a
jaguar that
luchador.
wears pants.
Here's a big robot guy who punches real and he's really big and he punches so hard and stuff. I don't know. I don't know. Tekken appeals to people though, and I think one of the reasons that Tekken does really well is that like they they're really good about kind of like tapping into say whatever country they're representing for their character.
Hmm.
And they're one of the first fighting games, if maybe still one of the few that does native languages for every fighting character.
Oh, that is
Um,
cool.
like Eddie Gordo now, he speaks Portuguese, right? Because he's from Brazil.
Yeah, that's cool as well.
Stuff like that. Characters. This character will speak. Lily will speak French. I think. Because she's French, and like people will speak Spanish, English. Whatever. Whatever language for whatever region. Which I've always wondered, why didn't we do that more? Why does Street Fighter do that and they just don't? It's either Japanese or English.
I mean,
But
say what you will about Tekken, though, it made capoeira much more
Mhm.
prevalent in the United States, especially where like people knew what that was. One, it
Mhm.
just looks really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you want to, that's one thing that like Street Fighter and any fighting game where like they use real fighting techniques. Like, man, the my team versus your team arguments about what martial arts you're gonna take as a kid. Did you have that?
Mm.
Like, I knew a lot of kids
It's
that
like
took karate and stuff.
whatever dojo kid is, whatever
Right.
whatever a kid goes to is the best thing ever,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
capoeira is untouchable. Well, you never seen a guy doing capoeira fighting a dude doing Shotokan karate
Right.
because capoeira is a dance. It's beautiful.
Right. And there's jujitsu, and then there's what is it, Krav Maga? No.
Krav Maga. I don't know if there's Krav Maga in Tekken.
Tekken, I don't know, but there's what's the one Aikido?
Is
Um
Aikido in?
Aikido, I don't think it's in Tekken. It's the one that they used for like Batman Begins. Um it
Oh,
really, like really kind of like, up close and
oh,
dirty.
Casey. There's Casey, and Casey is what that's called. It's
Oh,
called the
okay.
Casey fighting techniques or Casey
Mm,
fighting.
Right. Either way, though, because it's not. I don't think like the minutia of like specific martial arts is necessarily what draws people to Tekken. I think it's just
No.
the characters. People are drawn to the characters because they're even if I like. So I'm not again. I'm not really a huge fan of them, but it's like they're you look at the character, you can immediately tell what the character kind of is. There's
Right.
no like ambiguity, when picking a character, which this is kind of something that I think a lot of anime fighters can fall into the trap of, especially if they're like based on IPs of like visual novels and stuff. Because there's like a few of those fighting games in anime fighters, and you're like, what is this character? Who knows? You
Right.
know?
If you haven't read the visual novel, there's no
Yeah,
way to tell.
or like
Yeah.
you look at
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
you just look at this character design and what kind of fighting style do you think they have?
Mm. Yeah.
Uh,
No, that's totally fair. One of the reasons I don't think I ever learned anything about Tekken is for the longest time, the arcade that I went to the most was like I think it had yeah, I don't think it had a Tekken for the longest time. Like
mm,
it eventually did, but I think it was like all Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter in that arcade.
mm,
Um, like I know it got like MK3 like a brand new like right away.
yeah.
But it didn't update its Street Fighter in forever, or there was like the Mount Asia, God rest it. Uh had like we'd drive up there and it would have like 3 or 4 different Street Fighters.
Hmm.
And I know it had a Tekken machine, but like like Tekken just wasn't super popular in the
No,
arcade.
I feel you, and I know and I remember there were specific arcades where people would be playing Tekken, like Tekken 3, Tekken 5,
Yeah.
but like I didn't see the arcade scene for Tekken much. 5 was probably the most I saw for it.
Family Fun had Tekken, right?
It did.
I was over in
It
the
did.
Virtual corner, so like I wasn't playing Tekken
It had it, but
arcade.
again, like the big game there was like MVC2 for the
Right.
most part, and they had a bunch of machines for Third Strike and Alpha 2,
Yeah.
and then eventually, Street Fighter 4 kind of became the thing when that came in. But yeah, like I either way though, like Tekken, but again, Tekken really came into its own. Tekken's a weird series where like it's sort of ebb and flow. Where like obviously the first one did really well as an early PlayStation 1 fighter, and then 3 really did good because it was a big graphical showpiece for the system.
Right.
And then, 4 and 5 were kind of like, they did okay, and they were starting to dip with 6 and Tag 2. Really kind of like went down, like so, like it went way up with 3 and Tag 1, and then like by the time we got to 6 and Tag 2 it was on a downward trend. Don't even take my word for it. These are literally Namco's own words, where they said Tekken Tag Tournament 2 was sold under expectations, and then Tekken 7 was this long, launch where like came out, and like over time it just kept selling. It just kept selling, kept selling, kept selling. Kind of, I think a lot of that had to do with opening it up to the PC audience. And now Tekken 7 is like the best selling Tekken ever,
Hmm.
ever, ever, ever. So, yeah, it's kind of fascinating to watch kind of like the rise and fall of that. Street Fighter, you could say, is similar, where Street Fighter 2 comes out and it's like huge, right? And then the other Street Fighters that follow do pretty well, but it gets to this point where Street Fighter basically kind of like loses interest of the audience. Then 4 comes out and reignites, everyone's love for it again, right? And then
Do you think concept behind like do you think the reason for the fighting game happening or the fighting tournament happening has part of the staying power? Like Mortal Kombat tangentially has like the you're fighting for your world setup.
mm,
Is that memorable? Street Fighter,
it's
people
memorable
from
if you
all over the
can
world.
make it simple enough to remember,
Right.
in
Like
a, in
I
a weird
don't
sort of way.
why does
Like
Tekken happen?
yeah, the King of the Iron Fist tournament. Like
Right.
I,
Okay.
I don't really know. Mortal Kombat is good because yeah, it's a fight to the death. That's really like literally it sells itself. Like it's in the title pretty much. Like what is Mortal Kombat about? It's about people fighting in a tournament to the death. You fight to the death, finish him is like the thing. And I think that really stuck because Street Fighter was a tournament. Street Fighter, people going around the world getting in these street fights. And you're trying to like become the champion or whatever. And this Mortal Kombat's like okay, it's like that, but now you have to kill your opponent. You have to fatality them, right? And that's always kind of stuck. And again, Mortal Kombat also, I think, falls in that very much. It's like here's a ninja that shoots fire. Here's a ninja that shoots ice, right? Like
Mhm.
here's a guy, here's a crazy like martial arts guy with with the big straw hat, and he shoots lightning out of his hands. It's like, it's so simple. Here's our Bruce Lee clone. And, here's Mr. Holly. Here's the Mr. Hollywood man, and he does like all kinds of martial arts stuff. Mr. Hollywood martial arts guy. Here's a big buff military guy. It's like they kind of write themselves.
So do you think it's as simple as like you need really, really distinct, simplified characters?
I think you just need to look at the character and know what you're getting into. Like, you should have an idea of what this character is and how they play by looking at the character. I think when your character plays nothing like they look, I think that's a problem. And it's funny because I saw like a tweet the other day about this, and it was people sort of praising. There's a character in King of Fighters called Hinako, and she's like this schoolgirl like looking character, but she has like more of like a European, I don't know, whatever. Anyways, she has like a big singular dress on, right? And she's the sumo character. So they showed all these sumo characters from all these different, fighting games, Virtua Fighter, Street Fighter, whatever, and they're all these sumo guys, right? And then there's SNK, and it has like this little schoolgirl who does sumo, and she's really fun to play, but therein lies the problem. You look at this character and like, what is this little schoolgirl with a backpack on? What is her fighting style? Sumo? The fuck?
Yeah, and I mean, as Street Fighter went on, like newer Street Fighter characters aren't necessarily obvious in what they're gonna do.
and they're not, and that's it's funny to think about that too, where like you look at Street Fighter 4, where it started with 4 new characters and it added, I think, by at least 4 other new characters by the end of its run. And one of the only characters to have any staying power from Street Fighter 4 was Juri. And Jerry gets into the sort of the elephant in the room I haven't addressed, which is, the fuckability factor that drives all the horn dogs wild. But it's like, Abel and El Fuerte and Rufus. Sea Viper did show up in Marvel 3. You could say Sea Viper was kind of, maybe had some like short-term staying power, but again, hot mom looking character with boobs. So that's why that was the only one of those 4 to show up, really. I think Rufus might have showed up in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. But
never
then it's like,
gonna pretend to be mad about hot characters.
But then you have like characters like Hakim, the Turkish oil wrestler. He never to be heard from again, kind of thing, right? Seth did come back in a big way for Street Fighter 5, where they turned Seth non-binary, which was or possibly even gender fluid. It's hard to define necessarily. It was a really good call because Seth's design was so boring in Street Fighter 4. So the design they gave them for 5 was like, but Seth, nobody asked for Seth to come back in 5, and Seth isn't, nobody has asked for him to come back in 6 either. But like, what's the one character from Street Fighter 4 that they introduced that like has all the staying power? Juri, the bad bee. She's hot and she's bad. Every guy wants to fix her. Every girl wants to be her, kind of thing. It's the Harley Quinn syndrome. I hate the character personally. I hate the design of the character. I hate fighting against the character. I'm just not a fan. It's like to me it's boring. But then again, Street Fighter didn't have a particularly standout bad girl before. Like, all the girls they had were not necessarily bad. You had the dolls in the Alpha series that Cammy was part of, kind of, but it's like they're brainwashed, and that's their storyline.
Isn't
so it's like
Cammy
having
an assassin?
When she's with Bison, then she's part of British special forces.
It still kills people though.
Well, from her introduction, it's like she's a good guy in Street Fighter 2. And then she's in the Alpha games, she's technically bad because she's brainwashed with Julie, DiCapri, another character from 4 that never came back. So it's kind of like, Jury's like, this is a bad girl, a bad guy character.
Okay.
So, maybe that's kind of another reason where it's like they didn't have a villainess, in Street Fighter for the longest time, like a real straight, there's no tragic backstory. This person's just bad. And of course, and she's a complete thirst trap. People love her. But I don't think thirst traps always work. And I think there is a danger to becoming reliant on thirst traps because there's
Then
a
you're
whole
just dead
fighting
or alive.
dead or alive, and you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't name a single character from Dead or Alive at all. But I'll
Really?
never complain about seeing it going.
Kasumi, Ayane, Hitomi, Leaf, nothing. Tina,
Nope.
Base.
Oh, is that the one with the big titties? I'm just guessing.
Do you have any idea how little that narrows it down?
Correct. That's my point. It's like I don't like they are all the exact same in my head.
But like it's got Ryu Hayabusa and Ain and Jan Lee and nothing.
Nope.
Ain't ringing any bells for you, huh? You
Nah.
didn't play Dead or Alive, did you?
Yeah, I mean, not literally. I think the last time I played Dead or Alive was in the early 2000s.
It has Nicole the Spartan in 4.
See, that sounds cool. That sounds really cool.
Well, it means like a Halo Spartan.
Well, less cool, but
Why is that less cool, Andrew?
because isn't she just going to be in the armor?
Yeah.
Well,
It's not Master Chief. It's her name is Nicole.
but she looks like Master Chief.
Yeah, because they're just in an armor.
Yeah, so they put Master Chief and then they were like, yeah, it's Nicole.
I mean, the voice lines that come out are definitely not, John Smith or whatever Master Chief's name. Master Chief is God. They gave this man so much story because like his name is Master Chief and what's his real name? John.
Yeah, John 117. That's what's up. Everybody loves like Master Chief.
I won't fail. We'll win. Yeah.
Get up, Marine.
Of course, they needed to write 6 novels to like legitimize his character because like he had the personality of a piece of bread. Otherwise,
he still has the personality of a piece of bread. All the ones with personality died
in Reach.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Fred was there, and then like Kyle. There's a guy, I think his name's Kyle. I forget, he's like 1 or 2 something. That dude dies pretty hardcore. He blows himself up with a nuke after telling the bad guy that Spartans never die. They just go missing in action. And then he blows himself up. So that's cool. That happens also in a book, I think, though. So,
But either way, yeah, I think getting back to my original point, I think you got to be careful if you lean too heavy into the thirst trap area, because then your game starts to become only known for that thing.
Well, I think it also has to do with like Cammy is a thirst trap. Her design has been a thirst trap forever. But it was also a fairly unique thirst trap. She's wearing a one piece.
It's
and
military.
and has like camo painted on camo paint on her legs, and she's wearing a beret. Like she looks objectively cool on top of the fact she is clearly like eye candy. It's sort of the same for like
at least kind of the same because you got like those bracers with spikes all over them and stuff,
Yeah.
So,
but like it's sort of the same as like fairy tale armor, where it's like, oh wow, her boobs are super protected.
Battle armor, bikini, or boob armor.
Right. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess, right, it does protect her heart, technically, I guess, but yeah, sure, her bracers got, they got spikes on
Boob armor is so funny if you know anything about actual armor. When you see, games go way out of their way to have like boob armor, it's kind of like, it's pointless. Like,
I'm
utterly
sort of
pointless.
wondering, like, okay, if you wanted to have a new franchise today, we've narrowed down a few things. You want to have like 8 to 10 clearly defined characters that are designed around what their gameplay is going to be.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to have a sumo guy that does nothing but like flying kung fu fighting.
Right. Well,
I think would be fun.
And I think what we're talking about here is not based on a pre-existing IP. We're not taking anything, another game, another movie, another TV show. Because I mean, even newer fighting games, like, well, this was new, that was new. It's like you look at something like Dragon Ball 5. It's like it's Dragon Ball Fighters.
Right.
It's based off most popular animes ever, kind of thing. So
And
it's
in
like,
my opinion, I guess the elephant in the room, of course, is like Smash, right?
yeah, and Smash is a crossover fighter. That's all it
Right.
is.
And those characters basically take a facsimile of what their fighting style was in their game.
Right, yeah. They play kind of how you expect. And then when they don't, it's something like Captain Falcon, where like, okay, he runs really fast and he has some
Right.
really fast sliding kicks because he was a race car driver.
Right.
And then you give him a big old punch because why not? Like that's like a little out
Hell
there, but it's
yeah.
like you don't have anything to work with. So yeah, like there's a lot of fighting games where it's like, well, what about this? What like Power Rangers Battle for the Grid? It's like, okay, it's based off Power Rangers. Like how do you make how do you entice people with a new fighting game?
But yeah, so
And,
you need a simple story that hooks itself, that you don't need to explain, which is what attracts all the lore boys anyway. Lore
I
boys
think
is what I call all the people who
if
read
you
too
can
much into
make
things.
if you can make the story interesting within 2 or 3 sentences of explanation, you're doing all right.
Yeah. Mortal
Now
Kombat,
and I've seen some
perfect
funny
example.
ones where it's like, okay, like a game that kind of falls into this, but is terrible. Let's say Fight for Life on the Atari Jaguar, where it's about fighters in hell who are fighting for their right to go back to life, kind of thing. They're basically fighting in a tournament in hell to see who gets to come back to life.
Okay.
Fight for life. Um,
I'm into that.
it's simple and easy, and it kind of fits that bill, but the game is trash and it's on a Jaguar. So
Yeah, okay. I guess we're assuming that the game isn't going to be
well,
total
we don't
ass.
have. Seeing is here's the thing. People, I'm immediately you can hear the flame wars immediately starting. There's no trash consoles anymore.
No, there's not. Yeah.
There's not. There are no trash consoles anymore. There's Xboxes, Series S and X, there's PS5s, there's Switches, there's PCs. All of them are good. All of them you can do good stuff with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you were going to be a real dick, you could say that the Switch now is getting long in the tooth and could be considered
Yeah.
ass compared to
It's
the
yeah,
other.
and it's a potato, but it still runs many good fighting games. And here's the thing's going to be replaced probably in a year.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, it's like the Switch isn't even a factor. You're talking about Switch 2, which will be much better, obviously. There's no crap consoles anymore, though.
Right.
There's no worry about can we even make anything run on it anymore.
Well, that in a
So
fighting game isn't necessarily that intensive.
right, and we're in a spot where I actually like to be. I would say I prefer this where things are now. It falls on the artist more than the technical wizardry now.
Right.
Now it's like your art has to sell it because everyone knows you can make a really good looking fighting game, but now you got to sell it on your art. Now
You
the art
do,
has to be good.
and you do need to have those like classic, something that Ono talked about at one of the E3s that we had like gone to and saw him speaking. Maybe it was for 4. I can't remember which Street Fighter. But he talked about something that like there's not a lot of people making fighting games anymore that were like OG fighting game designers.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that like he had to argue with a producer about why like the hands and the feet of the fighters needed to be a little
Bigger.
bit bigger and stuff like that. And it's like you need that kind of thought process and expertise so that people can process. I guess we're assuming, all things being equal, that you have people who know how to make a fighting game that doesn't suck, big ass dicks. But that being said, is there a particular art style that you think should go for a fighting game? Because like you get a lot of anime fighters, and part of it I think is because IP, like anime IP or like manga IP, I guess, that in a way is easier to do because you have a ton of those animators in Japan, and a lot of Japanese or a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fighting games are made purely in Japan. Most actually, aren't they? Like,
Yeah, pretty much.
there's
Because
only
then
a couple really
it's
outside of
like yeah, MK is the one big one,
big one.
and
Yeah.
then of course there was KI if that ever does come back. But here's the other thing though, is that like there's a ton of indie fighters being
R-
made in America,
That's
and
fair.
Project L is being made in America, obviously. Project L is a big one, but Project L again is one of those games that falls on. This is a very very well established IP.
Right.
We
And
know, we don't have to sell you on a new character in Project L. We
yeah,
just have to.
and from your
We just
hands-on
have.
experience, well
Mhm.
built, but how much of it
Yeah.
is super memorable to you from the little bit that you've played?
Well, Project L does everything that it's supposed to. It's like, okay, here's this big guy. He's in a big suit of armor and he's got a big hammer. How does he play? Pretty much like you expect, but maybe even a little bit quicker because the game is just a quick game in general. But it's like, yeah, he swings his
Okay.
axe around. He swings the axe around real hard. And then the trickiest character is the thirst trap fox character. It's like the I don't know what her name is, Ari or something. She's like a nine-tailed fox lady, she just it whatever. Waifu bullshit. She does like weird tricky water bending stuff. Um
Huh.
which I guess it's a tricky character. It's a fox or whatever. There's a character who has a bat and he has like a time thing on his thing, but he swings his bat and he swings bat at you. He has a time gimmick as well. But it's like, yeah, it's a character that kind of skates around and bats you. And then there was like a samurai looking dude, and he does samurai looking, quick attack stuff.
Okay.
So it makes sense. He's like most of them all make sense. I mean, the other one is the thirst trap character, which was a little more like odd, but like I think what the
Mm,
character's doing is very familiar to people who've played and fapped to League of Legends a lot.
I guess, one of the other things that we should talk about too is like the real reason that they're doing everything based on existing IP today and not creating new IP is the same reason that everything's doing that, is the people with the money don't think new ideas sell.
How do you? Because the thing is, the only people trying now is indies, and God bless their soul, but like most, I'm not gonna say all, but most indies, they don't have like enough
Well, they
just
don't have marketing
money.
juice.
They don't
Yeah,
have
they don't have
enough
marketing
money
juice.
to make a game look like what it needs to look like. They just don't have they literally don't have the means and manpower to compete.
Right, yeah, but like if you had the backing, like if Capcom wanted to do a new IP from the ground up, like
Hmm.
they have the money and the marketing team to do it.
Yeah.
And just based on it being a Capcom game, it's more likely to be a success than an indie fighting game,
Hmm.
especially because they have the pedigree of being
Yeah.
Capcom.
There is one sort of, and I feel we should mention it because it would be remiss. It would be wrong for us not to. There is a success story for an indie fighter, and that's Skullgirls.
Oh yeah.
And Skullgirls is an indie fighter that was all brand new characters, and it has found much success. But one, the mechanics were really solid. But two, Skullgirls looked really good.
Right.
You would see and you're like, wow, that looks like a cartoon in motion. Because again, the artists have to sell it, right? It's no longer about like how crazy graphical, what can your presentation, be next gen looking. No, it's everything is on the artist. So they had really good artists and still have really good artists making Skullgirls content. And it is a success. Not obviously on the level of like say Tekken 7 is or Smash Brothers, obviously, but it is a definite success in
Comparatively speaking, yeah.
comparatively speaking. But they worked their asses off for it. Not only did they, not only from a gameplay, but also we want to make sure the game looks really, really good. Um, so you can have success, but it's like you gotta. That's the thing. It's like in I don't know how to say this in any sort of nice way, but there's indie fighting games where the mechanics are rock solid, but the presentation is okay
At best, yeah.
at
Yeah,
best.
yeah.
And Skullgirls has phenomenal presentation. See, they were able to basically like I not only do they have good gameplay, they have really good artists and really good artistry. And having really good art, really good animation, combine that with really good gameplay. I think that's why it has been as successful as it is. And of course, there's a whole PR side to it as well because there was a lot of grassroots and a lot of outreach from the people making the game, and then their early fans who were very vocal about letting other people know, and yada yada yada. It also helped that they were at E3 before the game was out. Like they had some small. I think Konami was publishing it initially or something like that. So it was in their booth at one point at E3, so people could walk by E3. Oh my God, look at that! What
Yeah.
is that? And it's like, oh wow, that's a really pretty looking fighting game. So
Do you think the characters were more of a hook, or do you think the like levels were more of a hook?
oh, definitely the characters.
Yeah.
Skullgirls started out kind of thirsty, and they've kind of scaled back. It is, there's certain segments of the fan base that are very unhappy about like certain characters aren't as where they basically like, look, this character is a sexual character, this character is not really a sexual character, but like, so they're kind of like, they basically like drop some panty shots from a character who's not an overtly sexual character who had him, but they kept it on the characters that were overtly sexual. And that's made some people very, very upset. And you get like a lot of the chuds who are like, they censored it. I'm like, how are they censored it if they're the author? Like,
Yeah. Something that I think we've seen this on the internet in general, especially Twitter. But like part of this is when you're 11, 12, 13 years old and you're like, Cammy's so hot, or, blah, 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 character's so hot. And you just hold on to that. Like it just becomes fucking central. And so for them to change that feels like they're judging you as a teenage boy.
that's it. That's exactly it. These people are acting like they're being personally judged.
Right.
I've been insulted, and it's like, or maybe the devs team just kind of grew up a little and we're like, this is gratuitous and pointless.
Well, I also think the target audience for gaming has changed significantly in even the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, the majority of gamers now are in their like 20s, 30s, right? Isn't the largest segment of gaming in their 20s and 30s?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like
And
25, 35, something like that.
it's even older for fighting games.
Yeah, and fighting games it's an old genre.
Right.
Our heyday was the mid 90s. That was 30 years ago.
Ow. Don't say that. But my point is like that marketing is going to change. And I think there is a vocal segment of any game fandom that is, yeah, okay, it's dudes who just never grew up. Or rather, I should just say people who never grew up. But I also think there is literally, especially on the internet, 13-year-olds in anonymous accounts arguing and screaming. And you're all like, how can this person be so ridiculous? Because they're fucking 13. they're 13 and they're just like, this is the most important thing.
And this is my
ever
advice,
happened.
man. Just don't even engage. Don't even acknowledge, honestly.
Well, you just block them.
Yeah, well, ignore them. I don't have to go that far. I just ignore
rile them up a little more.
No, man, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. I see it, man. I see content creators, not even fighting game related, but just general content creators who have to feel this weird vindictive need to like argue, even when people are sort of on their side, but like have like one slight variance on something.
Oh, I know.
It's like, why, whatever, man. Like,
I don't care about getting disagreed with, especially if I'm wrong. I don't care at all. It's just that there's no good way to have a conversation where you can say the full picture of what you're thinking. Like on Twitter, and so you got to write 20 thread, and I try sometimes to like, explain my full point of view. But like one of the things is just like if somebody corrects me and I just don't have the capacity to explain my point of view, I'll just like it and move on. Be like, all right, I acknowledge that you have made a point. It's not me saying that like I agree 100%, but I'll just be like, yeah, all right, I acknowledge your point and move on. Mostly just because I don't know how anybody goes out of their way to like. Also, this is an aside, but can we talk about like content creators going out of their way to make a statement? Like they gotta make a statement on things that are going on.
It's called engagement baiting.
Do you think that's what like it's just like every content creator's like, oh, here's my statement on so and so? It's like, what the you review toys, and I like that. I'm not trying to belittle that you make content purely about toys, but I don't need to know your statement on whatever thing is happening in the news unless it has to do with the toy you just reviewed. Like,
Oh yeah, you mean like yeah. I mean, there's the part
like,
there's the part like
get out
stay
of
in your lane, which not really a fan of that mentality either.
It's not that, it's just that, like, I don't expect a content creator to be an expert on everything.
Yeah, and I mean there's
You don't have to have an opinion on
I mean
everything.
I'm going to give you a statement right now. There's a lot of really messed up stuff going on in the world right now and recently.
Yes, yeah.
I don't have enough knowledge or expertise on a very delicate subject matter and a very complex situation for me to feel comfortable making any statement on it
Why would
whatsoever.
anybody want it? Why would why would anybody care about what your thoughts on that thing like, why
Right. And I'm like, and I'm not,
oh,
like there's, and that happens all the time, but it's like, even more recently where everyone, it's so, we're getting blasted with stuff. And it's like, I'm not, I'm not the person to make any, I shouldn't, no one should be coming to me for anything really. And it's just like, I am not a person when I'm not educated enough, or I'm not like, part of any sort of subject in any way, shape, or form. If I'm not in it, I have no involvement in it. I don't necessarily need to be sticking my voice, my opinion into it necessarily,
one of
especially for
my
something not involving me in any way, shape, or form.
so to bring it more close back to the topic, because I'm sorry for the aside, but one of my favorite things to end that on is I saw a reply to somebody making a statement like that, like their statement TM, and someone literally being like, "Oh, you should fire your PR team," and the person reply, like the content creator replying was like, "I don't have a PR team." Like, I'm just some dude in
For
Minnesota.
for better or worse.
I'm just some guy who really loves this one thing that I do. And like, I happen to get a following of 1 million people. And now I'm expected to be an expert on anything happening in current events.
Yeah.
What? What are you doing? But anyway, back to fighting games. One last point to like round out the whole episode is if you're not going to make something on current IP, which I actually think, right now companies are like, okay, we've got to stick to current IP because it has a built-in audience. That's the whole reason they go with current IP. But I think what's going to happen is they're going to realize that by not going with existing IP, yes, you don't have the built-in audience, but now, especially again, companies like Capcom, um, they have their own audience. They have their own following. So they
Yeah.
can then create without any limitations. They can build from the ground up, just like they did with Street Fighter. They can design a fighting game from the ground up to have those visual hooks first, where they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about what the character is. They don't have to be true to the past of the character, or the story of the character,
Hmm.
or they don't have to get the quirks right. They
They have
can
some
literally
freedom.
design from it. Yeah, they have nothing but freedom. And then on top of that, they own it outright. They don't have to pay anybody else. They don't
When you put it that way, it sounds appeasing, but like nobody wants to gamble on a new IP anymore.
but existing IP is a gamble too.
It is. It's more of a gamble than they realize because when if a franchise fan base feels scorned, they'll let you know it real fast
Super
and
fast.
real
Yeah.
quick. Um,
Yeah.
and
And
that and then you've literally put yourself in a hole because now you have IP that's had its goodwill burned, which that's not fun to dig out of at all. Because now in your next game, you have to convince everyone that you're not the thing that made them all mad in the first place. So now you're literally like trying like it's an apology tour,
yeah.
and then of course the whole thing is new IP with all the risks of that. We're like, can you get people to care? And I think something has to. I think there's the key ingredients here are it's got to look cool, it's got to look appealing. Like it's got to give off a great first impression, and you got to be able to do cool stuff in it. And that kind of falls hand in hand. I understand, and I think what you're saying too is that it would be, it would be so much better for an established, publishing house to make a new IP rather than relying on no budget indie devs.
Right.
Because they have the money and marketing to make a new IP a success in a ways that indie devs just frankly don't, not for lack of trying, but they just don't.
Well, you're
Which,
not going to have millions of dollars to put into the budget.
right. Like, yeah, because Capcom makes a new fighting game, which they're not, but if they did, they could throw millions, literal millions of
Right.
dollars at it.
And
Which
some of the best talent that has
right,
ever worked on
and the talent pool, of course, that they
Yeah.
have there at their studio. Same with Namco. Same with Arc System. If they on a smaller scale, if they did ever want to try to do that again, because at one point, Guilty Gear was pretty much unknown.
Mhm.
And Blaze Blue was unknown for a while, and they struggled to find their place in the world, and they did eventually. Well, Guilty Gear did, anyways. I guess
Well,
Blaze
I
Blue's kind
wouldn't
of
say
dead,
that
but
either of those are huge hits, but they are commonly known. They are now, like, at least in the FGC, like,
mhm,
people know what that is. And
yeah.
that's, of all the games that have come out and come and gone and stuff, like, that still counts for something.
I think it'd be so cool just to see, because it's really been like 20 years since we've seen Namco or Sega, of the big two. Here's a new IP.
Mhm.
Hell, SNK. I don't know the last time I saw a completely new, unrelated IP from SNK. Right?
Yeah, although SNK is in a little bit of a different boat than Namco and
Well, they were, but now they're not. Now SNK literally has more money than Namco and Capcom.
Really?
But yeah, because Saudi Arabia bought them.
Oh, well, yeah, okay, that's fair. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia owns 98% of that company.
That is
They literally
man,
they have access to all kinds of money now.
hell yeah. Yeah, one thing that I realize now we're on the tail end of the episode, with just a few minutes left, but we didn't even talk about sound design and how important sound design is to a fighting
Oh
game
my
in general.
God, yes,
Like, it's one of
Jesus.
those
I'm
things where, like,
sorry. I'm ashamed of myself.
if you wanna know if like, and I don't even mean just music, but iconic music in a fighting game is yes, but, um, you can tell, one, if the visuals are actually really good in your fighting game by muting the fighting game and playing it on mute. If like, and I don't mean like just like the visual cues, like characters look cool. I mean like if the visuals for like tracking action and like the fighting and stuff like that is really strong, sort of like how Ono talked about hands being bigger so you can follow them, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
If you want to know if the fighting game is really successful on that, turning off the sound will make it a lot more obvious. The same way that if you want to like know if the sound cues are strong, it
Hmm.
sounds really dumb because of course you're not going to do this in a match, but like closing your eyes and going just off the sound cues
Hmm.
to know like how well it cues you for what's
Yeah.
happening.
And like Mortal
Huge.
Kombat's a franchise that's pretty much existed just without having. I mean, it has a soundtrack, but it pretty much doesn't.
Right.
But what it does have is sound effects. Really, really,
Right.
really famous sound effects of
Yeah.
"get over here" and lots of chopping and finish him, and like, the announcer and the fatalities and the scorpion and stuff. It's like very famous sound effects. Really good sound design there. And of course, Street Fighter kind of lives in, and Tekken both are very well renowned for their soundtrack. Guilty
Mhm.
Gear, very well known for its soundtrack.
Well, the sound of just a hit landing
Yeah.
versus a hit missing can make all the
That
difference.
is that is something you see indie devs kind of flub a lot, surprisingly.
It's probably so to bring it into my own area of like experience in filmmaking, when you make your first short film, usually the thing that sucks the most is sound, because a lot of people don't think about sound as they think of it as like supportive to something
Mhm.
else. Like when you think about film, you think it is an entirely visual medium, and that is true to an extent, but sound is such an extremely important component to film, to modern film, that like bad sound is less forgivable than bad visuals. So if you're making a short film, for anybody who happens to be doing that right now, and you're like, oh, I have to choose between a better sound package and a better camera package, choose the better sound package, because better quality sound will stand out better than better visuals with bad sound.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's probably pretty commonly known now because YouTube spits that tip out all the time. But that was like a big deal in film school. Look, I saved you a lot of money going to film school. Make sounds good. But I think sound, especially in any visual medium, gaming, you know, uh, anything really, is much more important than people
There
realize.
needs to be a reckoning. This could be a whole side quest topic. There needs to be a reckoning for sound, music especially, but sound in gaming as well. I think sound effects are pretty good for the most part in most gaming, but kind of like you say though, like indie dev stuff does always kind of seem to like do what they'll use like a
It's
very
hard.
basic sound library, and it's hard. But yeah, like I cannot believe we live in an era where like games don't have themes. You know what the Mario theme is, you know what the Zelda theme is, I could name half a dozen themes. You know what the themes are, but if I start naming modern day gamings, you'll know one of two things. What the title screen sounded like, maybe. And you'll know the big sad dad bummer, guitar, alt rock song that they sing at the end credits
Yeah.
or the midpoint when someone important dies. Because they only punctuate the like two fucking very specific moments in gaming nowadays. And then people get praised up and down for, oh my god, this game had such a great soundtrack. It's like, and it's like I don't want to crap on like Red Dead, 'cause I think Red Dead had a pretty decent soundtrack, but it's like people remember Red Dead because it had some, bummer dad country songs sprinkled in the middle and at the end of the game. Oh man, that song hit so hard, looking down a dead man's gun, and yeah. Ooh. And it's like, okay, great. I'm glad it had a song to cap off,
Look, you
the
turn
start of the
35 and you
credits.
just
But it's like there was like 100 hours of games in there that could have used music too.
you love dad rock.
Good
You
God.
turn 35, you just start loving.
I'm more just annoyed at like the crazy praise people talk about, like how good game music is and how far we've come, and it's like, no, Kojima, you hired an alt rock band to punctuate
Right.
your ending. That doesn't mean you're a genius at musical game score, because there was a whole game to score as well there.
I think a big mistake d- is that people think that sound effects is the same as sound editing.
Hmm.
And like the creation of sound effects and Foley artists is its own thing, and they're brilliant. But a sound editor,
Well,
it,
balancing is hard.
right, and like a sound editor in filmmaking, for instance, like when you're the editor of the film, like you'll use some temp sound effects and stuff, and then like you hand it off to a sound editor who goes in and finds the right sound effects and balances them properly, and like will make new sound effects if they're working with a Foley artist or whatever. That stuff, like there's a reason it's an entire vocation. it's
Yeah, well,
it's
that's
not
why
easy, it's really
there's
hard. Yeah.
two different sound Academy Awards
Yeah.
for sound mixing and sound editing.
Right.
They're separate. They're
Yeah.
very and they're separate for a reason.
um and yeah, I mean, maybe that's what we'll do our side quest about this week, is just like sound in games. But as always, we have producers to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. That's where all the side quests live. Audio versions, video versions, and the older episodes I am currently working my way through. I think episode 5 through 10 will be going up audio versions sometime this week. But our producers for this episode are Mutton Chops Johnson, the Pink Hammer, the Schmidt One, Scrunami, Croy35, Hyper Viper 89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes. And we will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.